So, is Superman actually soaring so high at the box office? Because that is what everyone is claiming. They are out here running all headlines and everything else saying Superman is smashing expectations and it has destroyed Man of Steel's opening domestic weekend. And we're going to have a look at this. There's also a strange thing that happened that David Zaslav himself has put out a statement, which I think is incredibly dumb and premature, which we will get to. But regarding the numbers, so what did Superman, James Gunn's Superman, actually open to? Well, worldwide it opened to $217 million. Domestically, $122 million. Internationally, very bad actually for internationally, at only $95 million. Now, the $122 million that they claim has smashed the Man of Steel record. Well, not exactly. Because if you look at the actual numbers, you will see that Man of Steel opened domestically with $116 million. Now, you're going, whoa, Broken World. That's clearly showing that Superman 2025 has beaten Man of Steel's opening weekend. Nay. Because you see, there's an issue with how they're putting out those numbers. The issue is that the Man of Steel numbers don't include the Thursday preview. That's right. There was a Thursday preview. Now, all the way back in 2013, it wasn't a full day preview as it is nowadays. In fact, it was probably a midnight showing. However, when you include the Thursday number into the overall 3-day numbers, the number actually goes from $116 million to $128 million. So you actually have to put in, if you're putting all these numbers realistically and correctly together, Man of Steel destroyed this movie's opening weekend. Internationally, this movie opened with $95 million, which is terrible, by the way, for an international number. But we'll look into that. Man of Steel's was $75 million. Once again, you're thinking, well, hang on, how is that beating this one? Well, the issue with Man of Steel's release internationally was it was staggered. Unlike this movie released worldwide altogether. Man of Steel didn't do that. Man of Steel only opened to 24 international markets, leaving 27 markets still to open. And amongst those 27 markets included the likes of Germany, France, Italy, and even China. So, if it opened everywhere all at once, the way this Superman movie did, it would have destroyed the international numbers of Superman. So, it's not a great start for Superman, not by a long shot. The numbers look impressive, but when you see and think of the actual budget and the numbers they're giving out, this is a terrible start for this movie. We know what the actual budget is. We've seen the tax form. We know it was $363 million. Now, that's before they get their tax break from the state of Ohio. So we don't know how far that went down, but overall, that was the budget. But you then add on the over $200 million in the marketing that they've spent. The movie needs to realistically make over $1.2 billion to break even. However, should we actually go on Warner Brothers and DC's number that they put out, which was a budget of $225 million, we're still having to add another 200 plus to the marketing, meaning we're looking at this budget being $425 million. And here's the issue. That means the movie would need to break over $900 million to break even. James Gunn has been out there for the past 2 weeks saying $700 million to break even. That's nonsense. He doesn't have a clue where that number's come from. They've now put out a statement, both Warner Brothers and DC, saying they would be thrilled if the movie ended with $500 million. You're telling me, even with your own numbers that you're putting out of the 225 million and knowing that the marketing for this thing is over 200 million, that you'd be happy to lose upwards of $200+ million? Yeah, no, I'm calling BS on this. And this is where we get to the statement that Zaslav has put out. And I don't know why they did this, because this is incredibly premature and incredibly stupid for them to do. Because the numbers aren't great and they're nowhere near great. Now, this movie, let's be clear about this. This movie could have incredible legs. This could be like a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 situation where it opens really low, but ends up just being a juggernaut that just keeps going and going and going. That very well could happen here. The writing's on the wall that won't happen, but it very well could happen. But let's have a look at the statement that Zaslav has put out, because it's just one of those things where you have to roll your eyes and go, dude, what the hell are you doing? So it says this: 3 years ago, I hired James Gunn and Peter Safran to reimagine and unify the creative direction of the DC under one leadership team. By breathing new life and excitement into one of the most iconic storytelling franchises in the world. James and Peter's commitment to honouring, which is funny, the legacy of the DC universe while forging something new and enthralling is inspired. I remember my first meeting with James 3 years ago. He spoke about growing up in Missouri and how the characters of the DC universe weren't just stories to him, they were like his family. His personal bond with these DC heroes was powerful, and I knew then that James was the right person to bring them to life. His love for the DC world runs deep, and it shines in every frame of his work. This weekend, we watched Superman soar as James Gunn's passion and vision came to life on the big screen. Superman is just the first step. Over the next year alone, DC Studios will introduce the films Supergirl and Clayface in theaters and the series Lanterns on HBO Max. All part of a bold 10-year plan. Remember, that was 8 years, now it's a 10-year plan. The DC vision is clear, the momentum is real, and I couldn't be more excited for what's ahead. David Zaslav, CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. That's an incredibly dumb statement to put out with this movie's first weekend and those numbers being that bad. This is saving face. This is like putting out there saying, we are so thrilled with what you've just experienced with this. Internally, Zaslav is probably incredibly pissed with these numbers. Let's put it this way, people, okay? Jurassic World only opened the week before. It opened with over $300 million worldwide. This weekend was its second weekend. It's already made $500 million in 2 weeks. And Superman came in well under 250 million worldwide, because it only has 217 million. Now again, this thing could end up being a juggernaut and just have legs for days and go and go and go. I've seen lots of different takes on this. I've seen lots of people, I even had someone in my comment section saying they went with their kids and they enjoyed it, especially the kids. And that is going to be important with this movie, is how many of the kids want to go and see it again. All that stuff. The argument that people are going to make of, oh well, you know, of course it's a kids movie. That's cope. That is not the case. There's elements for kids, obviously, like crypto and stuff, but realistically, it's not a kids movie. It's a movie for comic book fans. That's the reality of it. And if you want to sit here and try and claim that, well, this movie's for kids, so the numbers would fall in line with a kids movie, well, how are you going to explain the next batch of things? Because if this movie opens this badly, it's not looking good for Supergirl, especially when we were introduced to her in Superman and she's this drunken idiot who swears, not exactly endearing to people and leaning into, hey, it's going to be for kids. Clayface then is the next thing, with a budget that will only reportedly be 40 million. you still got a massive issue with that. Number one is they plan for it to be R-rated. Two, they're changing it into a full-on body horror movie. And three, it's a Batman villain that most normies, well, pretty much all normies, and quite a few comic book people don't know. And it's a Batman villain that you're putting out there with, guess what? No Batman. So that could struggle. By the way, Supergirl's reported budget is well over 200 million as well. So that's not good. And then Lanterns is clearly also going to be an R-rated show. Seeing as Nathan Fillion has already been out there saying, I dropped more F-bombs in this thing than I have ever done in my entire career. So, Creature Commandos was an R-rated show. Peacemaker is going to be an R-rated show. Clayface will be an R-rated movie. Lanterns will be an R-rated show. How exactly do you want to sit there and try and defend Superman by saying it's for kids when it's linked to all of this stuff? Lanterns is linked to this thanks to Guy Gardner. Peacemaker is linked to this because John Cena appears in the goddamn movie. So, how exactly do you want to spin this? Either way, these numbers, especially internationally, are terrible for a movie with such a high budget and knowing what it needs to make to break even. Warner Brothers and DC can sit there and say all they want. Hey, we'll be happy with this number. No, you won't. And we know you won't. Problem they have is Supergirl is already done. It's wrapped. That's on its way. No ifs, buts, or ands about that. It's on its way. It's probably going to struggle even worse than this. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not this movie has legs. But right now, it's not looking good for Superman. So, let me know what you think of all this and what do you think of the movie if you've seen it as well. Let me know. And with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.